With recording. All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Robert Pronovost. I am the Innovative Learning and Technology Integration Coordinator for San Mateo County Office of Education. For those who are not aware of where San Mateo County is, it's in the peninsula, kind of the South Bay area of the San Francisco Bay Area. And it includes all the way up to South San Francisco, so almost San Francisco, down to East Palo Alto and Redwood City. So just very near to kind of the Palo Alto and Stanford University as well. So a little bit about me. I started out as a 6th grade teacher at Bellhaven, which is a local K-8 in Menlo Park. I have taught 2nd and 4th grade as well. I was also the STEM coordinator and the director of curriculum and instruction for Ravenswood City School Districts. I have been a consultant for the past year around building makerspaces and leading maker-centered learning. And have also been a part of CUE and ISTE, and our makerspaces in Ravenswood won a couple of awards that you can see there. I've recently, as of 10 days ago, transitioned over full-time to work for San Mateo County Office of Education. And so I'm excited to be sharing a lot of the stuff that we're doing to all of the schools in our county very soon. So hopefully you may have attended some of the other sessions today and may have gotten a good sense of the why we want to integrate making into our work, why a library is really a prime place to integrate making and to have these materials available. Especially when you're thinking about equity of access. And so this session today will go into a lot of the what and the how. And so I'll start with a lot of the what, and I welcome all of the additional sharing of ideas through our chat that's happening over on the left side. Hopefully I will also be able to catch some of the things that you share and be able to just kind of highlight those as well. So the first thing that I go into and that I share about any makerspace that I have been in, at least, the first material that you can bring in, this is the very first project that was created by students in our first makerspace in Ravenswood, was built using cardboard. This was her puppet show. So, I mean, you could see kind of how simple it was, but she was so engaged in the building of this project and then used it to deliver puppet shows to some of the younger students, because we actually had our makerspace open during recess and lunch for grade levels, but then also before and after school. And so before and after school were times when multiple grades and different students were able to be in the room at the same time. Those cardboard tools, so the ones that you see in their hands right now are Make Do, and I will show you a little bit about that in a moment. But they can be very easily handled. These are TK students, so transitional kinder, so the 4- and 5-year-olds. So it can be used well from 4 and 5 all the way up through 8th grade. There are a couple of other tools that can also be very helpful. So there is an electronic or electric cardboard cutter called Zip Snip that you can find, that's about, usually you can find it between $25 and $35 through Amazon or Home Depot. And that's pretty fantastic. It's pretty safe because there's both a trigger on the top and the bottom that have to be pressed while students are using it. Oh, you're hearing a lot of other voices over the speaker. That is strange. Oh, okay. So I'm not hearing anything, and so hopefully, okay, so hopefully you're able to get that resolved. Apologies about that. So this cardboard fort was the first co-constructed piece or project within our makerspace. This was co-constructed from TK all the way up through 6th and 7th graders. You can see some pieces were definitely parts that were done by the older students, so those who are putting together the hinges. The younger students really had a sense of adding in the window and adding the door, and also just exploring it themselves. So the first cardboard cutter I mentioned was the Make Do kit. And so this Make Do kit is based out of, out of Australia. I believe a typical kit, which you see right in front, is about $12. The good thing about it is reusable. You can use those materials over and over. We recently, in April, we had a cardboard city for our for Redwood City, and students built an entire city with their parents using just the Make Do and cardboard. And so as far as considering it consumable or if it has to be dismantled, we definitely we lean towards the dismantling when we're using the Make Do. If we're building something consumable, something that students can take home, we often would replace that with duct tape. There also is another type of snap connector. I can't recall the name of it right now, but it's available on Amazon. That's a lot cheaper. And if you are able to use something like that and allow students to take it home, it's much better. And it's basically like a little snap on both sides, snaps together the cardboard. But it can be a little bit harder for students, especially younger students, to use. And yes, you can definitely 3D print the pieces. The original Make Do was kind of that same kind of snapping together and pulling apart, and those things would snap like crazy. And we would end up doing some 3D printing of them. But Make Do also, they have a link on their website, I believe, to some of the other things that you can 3D print. So you can 3D print some hinges and other materials that will actually allow students to go even further with their construction using cardboard and Make Do. Just really, really trying to highlight the power of cardboard and tape and any of those other kinds of found materials that we have in most classrooms. You can find it. Traditionally, it was used perhaps for arts and crafts, but there are so many different types of maker projects that you can do. If you are not familiar with Kane's Arcade, I would definitely check that out. I'm going to type it into the box right now. So Kane's Arcade, you should really look into that. A kid who designed incredible games out of cardboard and some other, tape and other found materials. Oh, and I love that some folks were participating in Cardboard Challenge. That is fantastic. So in addition to cardboard, hot glue guns, definitely probably one of the other necessities, low-cost necessities in any makerspace. They can be used for any sorts of affixing. This was one of my second grade students who was using this just for decorating their pumpkins. But having a hot glue gun station is really critical in any makerspace. Pretty much, it's pretty safe. That perhaps is the most dangerous thing that we had in our makerspace in Ravenswood. But really, if students burn themselves once, they learn very quickly not to do it again. And it's not because these are the low temperature glue guns, It's not a deep burn at all. And so it's a learning opportunity. And students are going to be much more successful, or at least much more careful the next time around. Talking about cardboard and hot glue, you can see all these other different types of materials. This is from one makerspace that I captured. They had built all of these different signs out of the materials. So you can see like the power was, those are power cords, photos using slides. So there's a lot of materials that you may not think were necessarily maker, but place them in your makerspace, and you will probably be very surprised by what students are able to do with it, what students are able to think of in creating. Now, another very low cost way to get making, and especially this is around electronics and circuits, into your makerspace is using Play-Doh. So there's these things called squishy circuits, and I learned just about a year ago that actually you don't need to make your own squishy circuits dough, because Play-Doh has salt in it and it's conductive. You do, if you want to make some non-conductive dough, you do need to make that yourself. That would be if you're having students make any designs with it. But this is a pretty fantastic way to allow students to engage in circuitry. You can see we have a couple of alligator clips there, a 9-volt battery, some LEDs, and the Play-Doh. All of these things you can find in bulk, very cheap on Amazon. This is actually an 8th grader who was just so, I mean, his entire class, but we wanted to capture him because of just how engaged he was. He was testing to see how many lights could that single 9-volt battery power. So just very low cost materials that you can use to bring in making without having to buy any of those more expensive kits like Little Bits. I love Little Bits, they're fantastic, but a Little Bits kit that's $200 that a group of 4 students can use, you can just, I mean, imagine how much Play-Doh and alligator clips and LEDs you can purchase. They actually have the squishy circuits kit for about $25. So take that and a thing of Play-Doh, and you've got everything you need for under $30-ish. And I'm not sure how many the battery could end up powering, but I do see that he had 6 at the iteration that he had right there. Another kind of low cost-ish material to use in your makerspace are Legos. Legos are not necessarily low cost themselves, but the fantastic thing is that so many families do have Legos that may have kind of run their course at home. So it's a great way to seek donations. One of the first things, and one of the things that we found that we received even more of than we could really handle was when we reached out for Lego donations. This right here actually are students engaging in the Lego We Do, which is, it's basically taking Legos and adding a little bit of robotics into it. It comes before Mindstorms or EV3. These kits, I believe, are around $100 to $150, so not that cheap, but you can not have to buy extra Legos if you seek donations from outside. Oh, and I see that yes. So yes, until you step on one, that's a great comment to make about Legos, and I did not include this slide, but there is a bag called the Swoop bag, SWOOP. It is basically a bag where all of the Legos, you just return them into this round fabric at the end of the day, pull up on the strings on the side, and you have all of your Legos cleaned up and ready to go for the next day. That is the swoop bag. And I have not even heard of the Boost Legos, so I'm very intrigued by that. I'd love to hear more about that, and we'll have to look into that myself. Talking about ways to engage students in robotics, especially for a lower cost. These right here are B-bots. So B-bots are, I believe, they're less than $100 per bot, and they allow very minimal coding, as you might be able to see on the two B-bots in this picture. There's forward, left, right, back, there is pause, and there is a go and a reset button. But students are able to program these B-bots and even go and tackle some great challenges. So this right here was a challenge that we had put together. Actually, one of my colleagues, Mario, had put it together for a school that had undertaken a natural disaster. There had been the story was that there was an earthquake and people were not able to get to the school themselves. So how could we use a robot to deliver the materials and to get around all of the kind of the rocks and other materials that people could not get around themselves. Yes, B-bots are great to use in just a multitude of classes. And you can see this mat right here. Another great thing about B-bots is that they are very accurate as far as each forward or back is a very specific distance. And so you can use this mat that you get from B-bot, or you can just use blue tape on your floor and know very accurately where the B-bot will end up. There's not a lot of kind of guesstimating involved. Moving into coding, the Scratch can be used on just about any machine with a browser now, I believe. And Scratch is just a great, cheap, free, fantastic tool to use to engage students in coding, in addition to kind of engaging them in this all digital world. You can then add on, yes, Scratch 3.0 is coming in. I'm very excited. I heard Mitch talking about it on the EdSearch podcast recently. I'm very excited. And if you add a Makey Makey, so Makey Makeys are between $25 and $50, and they allow students to interact with Scratch through physical objects. You probably have seen the banana piano before. That's a fantastic kind of very introductory example, but students can do all sorts of creative projects using some aluminum foil, Makey Makey, Scratch, and some cardboard. I saw students who created just a fantastic soccer game, kind of those old school arcade games where they'd have the little ball at the bottom and you'd have to kick it into the goal like with your actual foot. They had built their own version of that, which was pretty fantastic to see. Code.org also has a multitude of resources as far as learning to code. And so they have not only the stuff that's on code.org themselves, but also links to a lot of other materials, many of which are free to engage students in learning to code. There are programs definitely out there that you can pay for. We didn't have that privilege in my last school district, and so we relied on resources such as code.org and Scratch in order to provide our students with these opportunities. If you're looking at 3D printing, you do not need a 3D printer for your school. But if you are looking at 3D printing, first of all, oh, I did not include that slide. So Tinkercad is a free tool that can be used through any web browser to design objects. It does look very basic when you start, but I've seen 7th graders in our school district who created an entire Sonic the Hedgehog kind of character mold, kind of like one of those Funko Pop objects that he designed entirely in Tinkercad and was amazing. And this New Matter 3D printer is $300. It runs from a web browser. And so it's a very cheap, easy thing to use. I've also found a lot of kind of consistency and reliability in using it. So it's a very cheap 3D printer to be able to bring into your school. Oh, and I really appreciate everybody who's sharing all the other opportunities and 3D design platforms that are out there. So thank you very much for that. This right here is actually a design project that I engaged with this kindergartner. We tried to figure out a way to make the faceplate. The faceplate was broken. And so we together, he did most of it, but designed a replacement faceplate that actually ended up matching the wall as well. So it was not only a great tool for us to learn about making, but it also allowed us to make some replacements for much cheaper than it would have been to buy, especially if we were trying to match the paint, not that we were necessarily trying to. If you're getting into vinyl cutting, which I highly recommend, I would recommend a vinyl cutter before I recommend a 3D printer, because students are able to design all sorts of stickers, designs, t-shirt models, or I guess kind of iron-ons. US Cutter is a higher use one that is pretty cheap, $400 to $700. Silhouette, Cameo, and then there's also the Cry Cut. They just came out with that new maker. Those are a little bit cheaper. They do take a little bit more time to run each thing, and you have a much smaller platform. So this Silhouette Cameo you see is a 12 by 12 mat, whereas the US Cutter, depending on which size you get, it can do kind of 36 inches by as long of the material as you can find. So you can actually do cutting of all of the students' projects at once, which especially if you're looking at 3D printing, you're printing one student's project at a time. You have to clear the plate after each one, check to make sure it came out all right. You just can get a lot more done in less time with student designs through vinyl cutting. Oh, here's my Tinkercad slide. So in the last few minutes, I'd like to go into some of the how you do this, because yes, it's great to be able to say that these materials, we should have them and these are the good ones to have, but how do we actually make that happen? So the first thing is, saving materials. So this is one that this is a picture I captured at Lighthouse Community Charter School in Oakland, California. And this was sitting in their makerspace, basically reminding kids, like, don't toss out these things when you're finished with them, because we actually can use them over and over. That is not just useful for in your classroom, but also when you reach out to families. And I definitely would have a list of here's what we are accepting and here's what we are not accepting. But receiving donations, accepting donations of materials that are either broken or not being used anymore. You can get a lot of great tools from, especially looking at like LEDs, speakers. Yes, it does look like one of those batteries exploded. And I'm guessing that actually the batteries were less about not trashing for if they're not working, but more making sure that they can recycle them. But you also do want to make sure, I mean, those are small batteries. You want to make sure not to just toss them out after one use if they can still be used across. So this right here is a project that I did with some teachers in San Mateo County last year. And you'll see, it was using little bits, but you see this little dog in the background. I got this dog and a whole bunch of other Halloween cards by being a scavenger. So I was looking for cardboard actually, and I went to our local CVS or Rite Aid and was basically, I was looking for cardboard, seeing if they had anything out back. And kind of as fate would have it, I was driving past, seeing what was out, and actually sitting right outside of their recycling bin was an entire box of, this is not the box, because this is actually more cards that have been donated, but a box of just greeting cards. These were greeting cards that, as it turns out, at many of these stores, they inventory after the holiday, and they get credit for what they did or did not sell, and they don't have any reason to save those cards, so they usually just toss them. If you are able to make friends with somebody who works at one of these stores, they might be kind enough to leave it outside for you next to the dumpster, so you don't necessarily have to do any dumpster diving yourself. But just there are a ton of materials and resources out there, and you might have to ask somebody, you might have to go in and say, oh, I saw that you have all of those boxes that you have. So this was at a conference I was at. I saw all these boxes from these lunches that were delivered. Can you share those boxes with us? And more often than not, people are happy to share them. Also, there are a ton of resources and materials that families have at home, just in their everyday use. You can see the macaroni and cheese boxes, shoe boxes, all of these which can be reused in student projects in ways that I would not have conceived of necessarily. I was talking about circuit blocks. So this is something also awesome I learned from Sonoma County, which is you can take an old cell phone charger and create these circuit blocks that have the positive and negative ends attached to these nails. Plug this into the wall and you can power a number of LEDs. And a very important thing to know about this, if you're doing this though, is you do need the Play-Doh because it acts as a resistor to keep the 6 volts or whatever power is coming through that charger from frying the LED. Finally, just like to say thank you. Oh, and I love that. The final comment I see right here, makerspace equals recycle space. Yes, it's all about the reuse. So thank you all for participating and being a part of this right here. And I do hope that you'll be able to go back and find some great materials that students can use in your makerspace from your home, from your community, even around